Om Ajnanathimiranthasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamineti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadhi Paschatya Desha Tarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Gurave Gaura Chandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namaha Ananda Leelamaya Vigrahaya Hemavadivya Chavisundaraya Tasmai Mahaprema Rasapradaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Nityananda Maham Naumi Sarvananda Karam Param Harinama Pradam Devam Avadhuta Shiromani Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai Shri Nityananda Rama ki jai Samasta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, dear devotees, for very kindly joining on this Saturday evening or Sunday morning, depends on wherever we are joining from. Saturday mid-evening or late evening, again, if you're joining from Pacific or Central or East, wherever we are, a good evening, good morning. And we hope and pray that whatever we attempt to discuss in the next 45 minutes to 1 hour, may that bring in some inspiration and some attachment to the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The essence of Hari Katha is only one thing, to go one step closer to the lotus feet of Gauranga Mahaprabhu. Hari Katha is not meant for Manoranjan. For Manoranjan, we have many comedy programs and TV serials. Hari Katha is not meant for Manoranjan, but it is meant for Atmaranjan. It is meant to transform the heart. It's meant to transform the consciousness. So keeping that as the theme, keeping the lotus feet of Gauranga Mahaprabhu as our theme, and keeping the heart of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as our theme, let us try to speak something from the pages of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Bhagavat, and Chaitanya Mangal, all three blended together. You see, when the child is small, the mother does not give roti, sabji, dal, rice, but she blends everything. Cerelac. She puts everything in the blender and she blends everything and then she gives. So we are trying to combine everything. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Bhagavat, and Chaitanya Mangal all in one go, and we will try to present something. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the revered spiritual master of our Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Prabhupada, he would always say that when we worship Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we don't worship Chaitanya Mahaprabhu just by himself. Just like when we worship Krishna, we don't worship Krishna alone, but we worship Krishna with Srimati Radharani, always worshipping the Lord with his dear associates. Similarly, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur would say, when we worship Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, never should we worship Chaitanya Mahaprabhu alone, but we should always worship him with his very dear associates. Who are the associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. The principal dear associates of Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya, that is Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Prabhu Nityananda, that is Nityananda Prabhu. Shri Advaita, Advaita Acharya. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara. Very important personality. Gadadhar Prabhu or Gadadhar Pandit. And last, Shrivas. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Their Bhakta Vrinda. Vrinda basically means group. Different meanings of Vrinda, but one meaning of Vrinda means group. So, we see in Vrindavan, it's called as Vrindavan. Tulsi Maran is called as Vrinda. Why? Because Tulasi grows in groups in the land of Braj. So that plant that is growing in Vrinda, in groups, that forest is Vrindavan. Similarly, Vrinda also means a group of devotees. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, the group of devotees who are the servants of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So these are the principal associates of Gauranga Mahaprabhu. And one interesting philosophical point that our acharyas always speak about is the Shakti Tattvas. The Shakti Tattvas that emanate from the body of the Supreme Lord, they always come from the left side. While the Vishnu Tattvas always come from the right side. This is always the logic. Shakti Tattvas always come from the left. Vishnu Tattvas always come from the right. Who is Radharani? Shakti Tattva. Radha Purna Shakti, Krishna Purna Shaktiman, Dui Vastu Bhedanai Shastrera Praman. Who is Radharani? Shakti. And Krishna Shaktiman. Shaktiman is called a Shaktiman because he possesses Shakti. So Krishna is Shaktiman. Krishna has Shakti, but who is that Shakti? It is Radharani. If not for Radharani, Krishna has no Shakti. He cannot be called a Shaktiman. But the point here is Radharani is Shakti. And how do we understand she is Shakti? Because she stands to the left of Krishna. So Shakti always stands to the left of the Supreme Lord. Similarly, in Panchatattva also we find Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita. These are all Vishnu Tattvas. But the remaining two, Gadadhar and Shrivas, are Shakti Tattvas. So next time you see Panchatattva or you see any altar, right, left, we can understand. Left mein khade hai, matlab Shakti Tattva. Right mein khade hai, yani Vishnu Tattva. This is always the logic. So easy to remember. We don't have to ask anyone. We can see left, right, and we can do our analysis. So Saraswati Thakur would always say, when we worship Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, always worship Gauranga Mahaprabhu with these associates, never alone. And one principal Shakti Tattva associate of the Supreme Lord is Gadadhar Prabhu, Gadadhar Pandit. And we will try to speak in our discussion, we will try to speak something about Gadadhar Prabhu as to how he was instrumental in helping Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taste the mood of Radharani. We always say Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came down to taste the mood of Radharani. But who helped Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? One of the personalities who helped Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was Gadadhar Pandit. How he helped, what is the connection of Gadadhar to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what is their relationship, what is their friendship, we will see that in our discussion. Gadadhar Pandit was born, or he appeared 2 years after the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which means he's 2 years younger to Gauranga Mahaprabhu. And he appeared in the present day, that is Bangladesh, East Bengal. You see, you have East Bengal and West Bengal. So the East Bengal is nothing but Bangladesh. Of course, during those days, it was part of India, but nowadays it is Bangladesh. So he appeared 2 years after the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the present day Bangladesh. And when he was about 12, he, along with his family, they moved to Nadia, Navadvip Dham. So when he was about 12 and Mahaprabhu was 14, Gadadhar packed his bags with his family and they came to Nadia. And when they came to Nadia, Gadadhar was the neighbor of Shrivas. Just imagine, Gadadhar and Shrivas are neighbors. What explosion of love, what explosion of rasa. And Nimai was not far. So Nimai was a few blocks away, while Srivas and Gadadhar were neighbors. So complete explosion. In one, in one road, one block, there are like three very exalted Mahabhagavad Vaishnavas, of which one is Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. So Nimai, few blocks away, while Srivas and Gadadhar were neighbors. And naturally, as Gadadhar came to Nadia, he struck friendship with Srivas and Nimai. But Nimai and Gadadhar were very different in mood. Even though they struck friendship, they were very different in mood. Gadadhar was very devotional, very engrossed in study of Shastra, very simple-hearted, very sattvic in nature. But Nimai was complete opposite. Nimai was into debates. Nimai was into arguments. Nimai was into logic. Nimai was into Vyakaran, Sanskrit grammar. Nimai was into Naveen Nyai. During those days in Nadia, there was one logic called as Naveen Nyai. And it was brought from Mithila. The father of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he had gone to Mithila. And there in Mithila, this Naveen Nyai was very famous. So he tried to bring the book of Naveen Nyai to Nadia. But people in Mithila did not allow. So the father of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he memorized all the grammar. And he brought it to Nadia and he started writing it down. So the Nadia Vasis also got to know what Naveen Nyai was. So Nadia was filled with logics and debates and arguments. And naturally, Nimai was going with the flow. Gadadhar was going against the flow. He was very devotional. But Nimai was very argumentative. Debates, logic. If this happens, why is that happening? If that is happening, why is this happening? No? Too many questions. And naturally, the Pandits who were there, they were also into debates and arguments. Just for example, if one Pandit is up in the morning and he's brushing his teeth, standing on the banks of Ganga, and if he is facing northwest, another Pandit would come and say, hey, why are you facing northwest? Shastra says you should brush your teeth facing northeast. No, just for example. Shastra doesn't say like that, but just for example. And this would spark a fight. This would spark a debate. And they would start debating. No, you should face northeast. Another would say northwest. So filled with debates. And with all this, pure bhakti was completely drowning. Pure bhakti was getting lost. You see, Rupa Goswami in Nectar of Devotion, he says, bhakti is sudurlabha. It is very rare. Pure bhakti is very rare. This is one quality, sudurlabha. And this was seen in Nadia. So many debates, so many arguments that bhakti was drowning completely. And Srivas and Gadadhar, they were thinking to themselves, only if this Nimai becomes a devotee. He is so influential. He is so powerful. When he debates, he is so powerful. Only if he becomes a devotee. Yadi Nimai Bhakt ban jaye, to pura Nadia devotee ban jayega. The whole of Nadia will become devotees. Only if he becomes. And they would pray to the Supreme Lord. But Nadia was filled with worship of Durga Devi, worship of Chandi Mata. But pure bhakti was gone completely to the side. And when the devotees would walk, when Srivas would walk, when Gadadhar would walk, and when they would see Nimai coming from the opposite direction, they would take a detour. They would change the direction. क्योंकि इसके मुंह नहीं लगना है, निमाय के मुंह नहीं लगना है. If we start speaking to Nimai, he will get into debates and arguments, and our bhakti will go for a toss. Because you see, to fight, to debate, for arguments, you have to be very harsh. You have to be very rude. You have to prove the other person wrong. And devotees are not interested in all these things. Devotees are interested in being simple and performing simple bhakti. But Nimai was into all these debates and arguments. So when Nimai would walk from the opposite direction, Gadadhar and Srivas and all the Nadiyavasis, they would take a detour and they would go. Nimai se baat nahi karna hai, iske muh nahi lagna hai. But Nimai was still the same thing, very argumentative and into debates. And they would pray every single day. Their prayer was not for their family. Srivas and Gadadhar would not pray for themselves. They would not pray for the family. But they would pray only one thing. If this Nimai becomes a devotee, the whole of Nadia will get uplifted because he's so influential. He's so powerful when he speaks. And it so happened that their prayers eventually were about to fructify. When Nimai's father, Jagannath Mishra, Nimai's passport name is Vishwambar Mishra. When Nimai travels, his passport name is Vishwambar Mishra, son of Jagannath Mishra, right? So passport name is Vishwambar Mishra. So his father, when he departed, Jagannath Mishra, Nimai went to Gaya to do the last rites, to do Pinda. He went to Gaya. And when he went to Gaya, when he did the last rites, he ended up meeting his most worshipable spiritual master, Sri Ishvara Puri. When he met Ishvara Puri, naturally, Nimai surrendered at the lotus feet of his Guru Maharaj and got mantras. And he started chanting those mantras. These mantras were, of course, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, but primarily in the Shastras, mantras always mean Gayatri mantras. Shastra, when they say mantras, it is always Gayatri mantras. Of course, Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is also mantra, but Shastra, when it says mantra, it is always in connection to the Gayatri mantras. And Nimai started chanting them. He started chanting these mantras. He started chanting the Gopal mantra, Kam Gayatri mantra, Guru Gayatri, Gauru Gayatri. He started chanting all of them. And he became mad, ecstatic. Kiba mantra dila gosai, kiba tara bal, japite japite mantra karela pagal. Nimai goes to Ishvara Puri. He goes to his Guru Maharaj. Kiba mantra dila gosai. Guru Maharaj, what mantra have you given me? Kiba tara bal, and what strength it has. Japite japite mantra karela pagal. I have become mad chanting these mantras. What mantra is this? You see, those who are Brahmanically initiated, or even those who are first initiated Harinam, we are also chanting mantras. We are also chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. We are also chanting Gayatri mantras, but we are not getting this taste. We are becoming pagal for things of this world. But Nimai is becoming pagal by hearing and chanting these mantras. Japite japite mantra karela pagal. He became mad. And as he would chant these Gopal mantras, Nimai had the darshan of Shyama Sundar Shri Krishna. And as Nimai in his meditation saw the form of Shyama Sundar Shri Krishna, he ran like a madman. He ran to embrace that form of Shyama Sundar Shri Krishna, but Krishna disappeared. And as Krishna disappeared, Nimai fell down to the ground, completely unconscious, with tears like Ganga flowing from his eyes. Nimai fell down to the ground. Kaha mora prananath murali vadan, kaha jau kaha pau Brajendra Nandan. Kaha mora prananath. Hey, where is my prananath? Sri Krishna. Murali vadan. Oh, that Krishna plays Murli. Kaha jau, where should I go? Kaha pau, where should I look? Brajendra Nandan. Where is that Shyam Sundar Shri Krishna? He gave me darshan after I chanted the mantras. Where did that Krishna go? He was crying and crying and crying. So Diksha means a change of heart. Nimai changed after Diksha. He was no longer Nimai Pandit. He was no longer that Nimai who was into arguments and debates. But the Shastras describe this Nimai after Diksha became Bhāvuk Nimāi. Because Bhav started rising in his heart, emotions started rising. He became Rasik Nimai, Bhāvuk Nimai. Gone were those days where he was argumentative, no longer Nimai Pandit. He was Nimai Pandit with Keshav Kashmiri. But now after Diksha, heart has changed. Which means the teaching here is, dear devotees, after Diksha, our heart has to change. What we were 20 years back, we should not be that same person right now. There should be positive change in our character. We have to be prepared to change. There should be a revolution of change in our consciousness. If we are the same person who we were 20 years back, then what bhakti we have done? What Diksha have we taken? Diksha and bhakti means heart has to change. And Nimai's heart completely transformed, completely changed, completely melted. And now that Bhāvuk Nimāi, that Rasik Nimai again came back to Navadvip. He again came back to Nadia. Now please hear this, dear devotees, carefully. He again came back to Nadia. And when he came back to Nadia, the brother of Shrivas, Shrivas has three more brothers. Shrivas Thakur or Shrivas Pandit, Shri Ram Pandit, Shri Nidhi Pandit, and Shri Pati Pandit. चार भाई है. Shrivas Pandit, Shri Ram Pandit, Shri Nidhi Pandit, and Shri Pati Pandit. So the brother of Shrivas, that is Shri Ram Pandit, he saw Nimai is coming back to Nadia. Nimai is coming back to Navadvip. He was the first person who saw Nimai. He went to Nimai and said, Nimai, how was your Gaya Yatra? You see, when devotees come from Vrindavan Yatra, we ask them, Prabhuji, how was your Vrindavan Yatra? What did you see? Kya dekhe Vrindavan mein? Kya dekhe Mayapur mein? Yes, that's the first question. How was your Braj Yatra? Similarly, Sri Ram Pandit, he went to Nimai and said, Nimai, how was your Gaya Yatra? And Nimai, with folded hands, with tears in his eyes, he said, Prabhu, by your mercy, my Gaya Yatra was successful. And Sri Ram Pandit's eyes almost popped out. What? He's calling me Prabhu? He's folding hands? He's that same Nimai who's into arguments and debates. He's folding hands, looking at me. What has happened? Sri Ram Pandit almost had a shock. He said, you're the same person, right? You are that same Nimai. What has happened? You're crying and you are saying that your Gaya Yatra was successful because of me? Nimai said, yes, Prabhu. Because of your kripa, because of your mercy, my yatra was successful. And Sri Ram Pandit asked Nimai, what did you see? What happened there? And Nimai said that, oh Sri Ram Pandit, not Sri Ramchandra, but Sri Ram Pandit. Oh Sri Ram, when I was in Gaya, I had the darshan of the lotus feet of Vishnu Paduka. I had the darshan of the Supreme Lord. And as Nimai was narrating this, Nimai got completely choked. He was completely choked, not able to speak anything. And he said, I am sorry. I cannot speak anything more. I'm really sorry. If you want to know what happened in Gaya, please come tomorrow morning to the house of Shuklambar Brahmachari. I will meet you there. And Sri Ram Pandit said, of course, to see this form of Nimai, we will come anywhere. This Nimai has changed. He is Bhāvuk Nimāi. We will come anywhere. And the next day morning, the sun rose. And in the courtyard of Shrivas Thakur, you see, it's called a Shrivas Angan, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would dance. So in the Shrivas Angan, there would be a jasmine tree, where beautiful jasmine flowers would be there. And every day in the morning, Advaita Acharya, Gadadhar Prabhu, Shrivas, brothers of Shrivas, they would all come to pluck. They would all pluck flowers. And the next day morning, when they were all there and they were plucking flowers, Sri Ram Pandit came there. And Sri Ram Pandit came with a big smile. When Advaita Acharya, Gadadhar, Shrivas, when they all saw, they understood that Sri Ram has seen something that we have not seen. Oh, Sri Ram, why is it that you're having such a big smile? What have you seen? Seems like you have seen something very beautiful. He said, yes, I have seen something beautiful and you will not be able to believe it. They said, no, please tell us. We are very eager to hear. He said, no, you will not believe what I have seen. And now their utkanta, now their eagerness was growing. They put all the flowers to the side and they said, what have you seen? What is that thing that you have seen, that your eyes are lit up and you're having a smile on their face? And Sri Ram Pandit went closer and he said, shh, Nimai has become a devotee. That Nimai who was into arguments, he is now a devotee. And they said, what? He is now a devotee? Impossible. Sri Ram said, I saw it with my own eyes. He came last night, he returned to Nadia and I met him. And he is now a devotee. He's crying. And he has called us to the house of Shuklambar Brahmachari. So all of them, whatever flowers they had collected, they kept the deity worship to the side. Thakurji rukhenge. The deity will wait, but we have to first see what has happened here. What has happened to Nimai after coming from Gaya? They ran to the house of Shuklambar Brahmachari. They went to the house of Shuklambar Brahmachari. Gadadhar also went. But Gadadhar did not go inside. Gadadhar was standing in a different room. And from a crack in the wall, he was seeing. He really wanted to see whether Nimai has changed. So everyone was there inside the room. Advaita Acharya, Shrivas, brothers of Shrivas, Shuklambar Brahmachari, everyone were there. But Gadadhar was in a different room. And from a crack in the wall, he was seeing what is going to happen. And they were waiting. And after some time, Nimai comes there. And when Nimai came there, he saw everyone with a tilak. He saw everyone with kanthimala. And seeing everyone with tilak and kanthimala, Nimai started crying. God, 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 God. He started crying. Incessant tears. Ha ha Krishna, tumi gela kati. Ha ha Krishna, tumi gela kati. Oh Krishna, tumi gela kati. Where did you go? Seeing the tilak and kanthi, Nimai was remembering Shyam Sundar Shri Krishna. Very important point, dear devotees. Chaitanya Bhagavat describes, Vrindavan Das Thakur says, he quotes Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would say, a forehead without a tilak is like a graveyard. Such a powerful statement. This is there in Chaitanya Bhagavat. A forehead without a tilak is like graveyard. And Prabhupada would always say, whenever we take bath, there should always be tilak. As much as possible, tilak and kanti should always be there. Because we don't know when this body is going to drop down. But as much as possible, tilak and kanti should always be there. In fact, Nimai, when he was a teacher, he was first enrolled in the school of Gangadas Pandit. And later he also went on to become a teacher. And Nimai had this style, after he became a teacher, he would go to other schools to debate. And he was such that he would go to another school and he would ask a question to the teacher of that school. And the teacher of that school would give an answer. And Nimai would refute it. And then Nimai would refute his own statement. And then Nimai would again refute his own statement. And then he would again refute his own statement. And finally, Nimai would refute his statement by the first statement that he mentioned. So again back. So he was refuting again and again his own statements. So Nimai, who was so argumentative, later when he becomes a devotee and when he starts teaching in these schools, one time a student comes into the school without tilak. And Nimai stops the school and tells the child to go home, put tilak and then come back. No entry into school till the time you don't wear tilak. Nimai sends him home. And there Chaitanya Bhagavat describes, a forehead without a tilak is like a graveyard. Never should there be a time when we are not wearing tilak, as much as possible. Of course, there will be times where because of sweat, the tilak will go. But whenever we take bath, tilak should always be there, as much as possible. So here Nimai, who is Bhāvuk Nimāi, enters the room, sees everyone with tilak and kanthi, starts crying. Ha ha Krishna, tumi gela kathi. Ha ha Krishna, tumi gela kathi. Krishna, where did you go? Where did you go? And not able to even stand, Nimai holds on to a bamboo pillar. You see, sometimes when we do the pandals, my worshipable spiritual master, he would do this katha in Khadiya, and they would be like pandal programs. So when you do pandal programs, you put the bamboo. You don't have like a marble pillar like the way it's there in temple, but it's bamboo. So here in the house of Shuklambar Brahmachari, Shuklambar Brahmachari was very poor. Just like Kolavecha Sridhar, Shuklambar Brahmachari was also very poor. So Nimai, who couldn't stand seeing this sight, he held on to that bamboo pillar. And as he held on to that bamboo pillar, he fell on that bamboo pillar with so much force that everything came crashing down. And he fell down to the ground, crying. And now the devotees were perplexed. They heard it from Sri Ram Pandit that Nimai is crying. Now they saw it one-on-one. Their faith solidified. Has Nimai really changed? Is he not the same Nimai who was into debates? Seems like he has completely changed. And they all gathered near Nimai. and they started doing kirtan. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. They all came together and started chanting in front of Nimai. And now what happened was, when they were chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra near Nimai, they also started crying. Why were they doing kirtan? So that they can stop Nimai from crying. But now the power of Harinam was so much, they also started crying. So instead of reviving Nimai from his external, from his unconscious state, all of them started crying. And there were tears, 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 tears. And finally, after all the ecstasy subsided, there was complete silence in the room. But as there was silence in the room, and as Nimai wanted to speak something, there was some sobbing that was being heard. Someone was sobbing. And Nimai stopped. He said, "Is someone else also there in this room? Someone is sobbing." And Shriva said, "Yes, my dear Lord. Gadadhar is also there." So Nimai went and he opened the door, and Gadadhar was sobbing and crying. Nimai held the hand of Gadadhar and said, "Oh Gadadhar, you were always a devotee. In my childhood, I wasted so much time in argument and debates, but you were always a devotee. You were never engaged in these debates and arguments. You were always a devotee. Oh Gadadhar, will you help me find Krishna? Will you help me get Krishna in my life? When I got Diksha, I saw the form of Krishna. But now I'm not able to see that scene. Oh Gadadhar, will you help me get Krishna in my life?" And Nimai was repenting the time that he wasted. Just like Narottam Das Thakur. What does Narottam Das Thakur say? Hari Hari Bifale Jana Magunaino. Hari Hari Bifale. Oh, I have wasted my time. Time has gone just in vain. Manushya Janama Paya Radha Krishna na bhajiya Janiya Shuni Yavisha Khaino. Hari Hari Vifale Janama Gunaino. Manushya Janama Paya. Oh, after getting this human form of life, Radha Krishna na bhajiya. Not the bhajia, not bhajia pakoda. Radha Krishna na bhajia. Not if I have not worshipped Radha and Krishna. Janiya Shunya Vishakhaino. Oh, knowingly, unknowingly, I've just drunk poison. What is the use? I got human life, but I didn't worship Radha Krishna. I didn't worship Gaur Nitai. Janiya Shunya Vishakhaino. Narottam Das Thakur is repenting. Similarly, here Nimai, Bhāvuk Nimāi, is holding the hand of Gadadhar and is crying, "Hey Gadadhar, will you help me get Krishna in my life? I have wasted so much time." And Gadadhar, he says, "My dear Lord, you are now crying for Krishna. That itself is a proof that you have got Krishna. You are having tears from your eyes. What more do you want? You're already crying." But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or Nimai, Bhāvuk Nimāi, he said, "No, Gadadhar, if you bless me and if you shower your association, I can help, I can understand Krishna much better." Gadadhar promises. He says, "Yes, I will always be there for you. Whenever you need any devotional motivation, I will always be there for you." Like a genuine devotee friend. And now Nimai was so maddened in love. He was so maddened in love that people started having doubts that is Nimai sane or has something gotten into him. You see, sometimes if someone is very devotional, we also have sometimes question, सब ठीक है ना? Is everything okay? Like the way you're behaving, it is something very different from what you behaved earlier. And the Nadiyava says knew Nimai as someone who was into debates, but now he was crying and he was maddened in love. Everyone had doubts. Even Sachimata had doubts. What has happened to my son? Nimai, he goes to the house of Srivas and he says, Srivas, everyone says I am mad. Everyone says some ghost has haunted me. Everyone says I have a disease. Srivas, what do you think? Do I really have that disease? And when Srivas heard this, Srivas says, my dear Lord, if this is called a disease, then I also want this disease. If Krishna Prem is a disease, I also want this disease. I also want to be infected with this disease. When Nimai heard this, Nimai said, thank you so much, Srivas. Thank you for confirming that I am still sane. If you would have also said that I am mad, I would have run to the Ganges and I would have given up my life. Thank you, Srivas, for confirming that I am still sane. One time Nimai was sitting and Nimai was so much in separation from Sri Krishna. Ha ha mora pranadhana, ha ha padma lochana, ha ha mora pranadhana, ha ha padma lochana, ha ha rasa vilasera nagara, ha ha rasa vilasera nagara. Ha ha mora pranadhana, oh pranadhana Shri Krishna, oh Padma Lochana, oh lotus-eyed Shri Krishna. Ha ha rasa vilasera nagar, oh hero of the rasa dance, where are you, where are you, where are you? And as Nimai was crying, sitting in the middle of the road, Nimai is sitting in the middle of the road and he is crying, hey Krishna, where did you go? And Gadadhar, who was walking, he saw this and he said, Nimai, Krishna is there in your heart. There is no need to see outside. He is there in your heart. And when Nimai heard this, Nimai started scratching his chest. He is there in my heart. Where is he? Where is he? Where is he? Just like Hanuman started tearing his chest apart to see Sita and Ram. In Treta Yuga, the devotee was tearing his chest apart. And in Kali Yuga, the Lord is tearing his chest apart to see the Supreme Lord. Tearing, where? Gadadhar, you say Krishna is there inside? Where is he? And he starts scratching. And Gadadhar says, my dear Lord, you don't have to tear open your chest like Hanuman. But by crying and by performing bhakti, you can realize Krishna in your heart. So whenever Nimai had some questions, it was Gadadhar who was like his heart, who was trying to answer his questions, who was helping him go deeper in the practice of bhakti. Gadadhar was always there. And when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, just like the Vraja Gopis, what did the Vraja Gopis do? Vraja Gopis entered Grahastha Ashram. And when Krishna played the flute on Sharadiya Ras Purnima 5,000 years back, hearing the sound of the flute, the Gopis left everything and ran. Just like when we hear the sound of our mobile phone. When the phone rings, like Gopis, we leave everything and run behind the phone. If we are there in the kitchen or if we are working, whatever it is, we hear the sound of the phone, like Gopis, we just run. But this is perverted reflection. That is the purified form. When Krishna played the flute, the Gopis ran. They left all their Grahastha ashram and ran towards Krishna. And now Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is coming down to taste whose love? He's coming down to taste the love of Radharani. And Radharani is Param Gopi, the topmost Gopi. So in order to taste Radharani's mood, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also decided to go through the same process that the Gopis went through. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he entered Grahastha Ashram. Lakshmi Priya, Vishnu Priya, got into 2 marriages. Lakshmi Priya died because of the snake bite. Then he got married to Vishnu Priya. But at the age of 24, like the Vraja Gopis, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also left his home and ran away. Why? Because that's what the gopis did. So he also copied exactly the same thing. He left home and in search of Krishna, he went to Jagannath Puri. Because Sachi Mata, in fact, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to go to Vrindavan. But Sachi Mata told Nimai that, Nimai, don't go to Vrindavan. Vrindavan is very far away from Nadia. You go to Jagannath Puri. Jagannath Puri and Nadia are like the two rooms of the same house. So devotees will always be coming from Nadia to Jagannath Puri and vice versa. So I will get some information of what you are doing. But if you go to Vrindavan, it is very difficult. Mother's heart, right? Even if the child is about to take sannyas, माँ का हृदय ऐसा है कि बच्चा संन्यास भी ले ले, बच्चा गृहस्थ भी बन जाए, बच्चे का बच्चा भी हो जाए, लेकिन माँ का हृदय ऐसा है that she can never forget her child, always asking, did you have prasad, did you go here, what did you do? Mother's heart is very soft. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu takes sannyas and he goes to Jagannath Puri. And when he is there in Jagannath Puri, he is there in the house of Kashi Mishra, called as Gambhira. Gambhira means very serious. Gambhira pastimes, it is called as Gambhira because here in that small room, very intimate, very deep, very Gambhir, very serious pastimes took place. In Nadia, there was debates and arguments, but here in Gambhira, inside closed doors, no windows, nothing. What is happening inside, no one could know. And very Gambhir, very deep pastimes were taking place. And during the daytime, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would go to Jagannath temple. So when devotees got to know that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come to Jagannath Puri, everyone would come to meet Jagannath Puri. Everyone started leaving Nadia and they started going to Jagannath Puri. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, no, it doesn't work this way. He started sending everyone back, including Nityananda Prabhu. He sent him back. Prati varshe nila chale tumi na asibo gauda deshe rahi mora ichha safala karibo. Hey Nitai, prati varshe nila chale tumi na asibo. Don't come to Nilachal, Jagannath Puri again and again. Gauda deshe rahi. Stay in Gauda Desh. Gauda Desh means Mayapur, Nadia. Gauda deshe rahi mora ichha safala karibo. Stay in Gauda Desh and fulfill my desire. But prati varshe Nilachale tumi na asibo. Don't keep coming to Nilachal again and again. So Mahaprabhu sent everyone. Go back, go back, go back, go back. Everyone was sent. Only Swarup Damodar and Rai Ramananda were present. When Gadadhar got to know that Mahaprabhu is sending everyone back, he didn't want to go back. He wanted to stay near Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When Gadadhar got to know that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is sending everyone away, Gadadhar took Kshetra Sannyas. Kshetra Sannyas means taking sannyas and staying at the same place, not moving. For those devotees who have been to New Vrindavan, you see, we have Prabhupada disciple there. His holiness Varsana Swami Maharaj. He has taken Kshetra Sannyas, not leaving New Vrindavan. Aajivan New Vrindavan mein hi rehna hai. Prabhupada ji ki seva wahi karni hai. So that is Kshetra Sannyas. So Gadadhar Pandit, he took Kshetra Sannyas so that Mahaprabhu cannot ask him to leave Jagannath Puri. And that's exactly what happened. He took Kshetra Sannyas and Mahaprabhu could not do anything. So every day in the morning, Mahaprabhu would come to Gadadhar and sit and hear Bhagavatam from him. And at night, he would implement that. So morning was theoretical, night was practicals. Morning theoretical, night practical. This was his routine. Morning he would hear from Gadadhar about Srimad Bhagavatam, and at night with Swarup Damodar and Rai Ramananda, Mahaprabhu would bang his head against Gambhira. In Gambhira, there would be a small hole. In the wall, there would be a small hole. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, from that small hole, he could see Jagannath. And Mahaprabhu would run towards the wall so that from that small hole, he could see Jagannath. But he was so maddened in love, dear devotees, that he would run and he would bang his head against the wall. And he would completely bleed. And Govinda, who was sleeping outside, middle of the night, 2:30, 3 o'clock, doom! He would hear a sound. And that was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu banging his head against Gambhira. against the walls of Gambhira, completely bleeding. Why? Because in the morning it was Gadadhar who was giving him something that he was experiencing at night. But what was Gadadhar giving, dear devotees? What was Gadadhar speaking such that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was becoming mad at Gambhira at night? Gambhira, Gadadhar, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would sit and discuss Srimad Bhagavatam. And when they would discuss Bhagavatam, they would sit in front of a deity. One day, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was moving his hand in the sand. You see, Jagannath Puri has an ocean. An ocean means sand. So Mahaprabhu was moving his hand in the sand. And as he was moving, he got something. His hand struck something. So he called, Gadadhar, please come. I have to show you something. Please come. And when they removed it, it was the deity of Gopinath. Submerged under the sand was a deity of Gopinath. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally installed the deity of Gopinath. And now, dear devotees, the place where Gadadhar Pandit was staying in Jagannath Puri is nothing but the place called as Yameshwar Tot. So Tot in Oriya language means a garden. And Yameshwar means Lord Shiva. So Jagannath Puri has 5 forms of Lord Shiva who are like doorkeepers. Like in Vrindavan, we have Gopeshwar Mahadev, Aseshwar Mahadev, Icheshwar Mahadev, Vankhandeshwar Mahadev, Bhuteshwar Mahadev, Chintaharan Mahadev, Aseshwar Mahadev, Ichaharan, so many. Mahadev just goes on. In every nook and corner, Mahadev is there. Similarly, in Jagannath Puri also, Mahadev is there as doorkeeper. 5 forms of Mahadev. And one of them is Yameshwar. So because Yameshwar, Lord Shiva, is there in a very beautiful garden, and garden in Odia language is called as Tot. So he was called as Yameshwar Tot. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu installed Gopinath there. That is why Gopinath is called as Tota Gopinath. Because Tota means garden and Gopinath means our Gopinath. So besides Tota Gopinath deity was where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Gadadhar would sit and study Bhagavatam. Now we may think, oh, what is so special? What is so special of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Gadadhar sitting and studying Bhagavatam? Well, there is a lot of things that are going on. Externally, it seems like a Bhagavatam class, but a lot of things are going on. To understand this, dear devotees, we have to go 5,000 years back in the past. We have to go to Braj Leela. In the pastimes of Krishna, when Krishna disappeared from the Rasa dance, the gopis came to Jamuna and they started singing something called as Gopi Geet. Jayati te dhikam janmana braja kshayata indira shashvadatrahi. The gopis, they start singing Gopi Geet, and one gopi after another gopi, they are singing Gopi Geet. And Krishna is hiding behind a bush, but Krishna is not coming out. And finally, the last verse, Yatte sujata charana murvam staneshu bhita sanai priyadadi mahikarkasheshu tena tavim atasitad vyatatena kimsvid kurpadibir brahmatidir bhavatayushamnaha. When this verse was chanted, Krishna came out of hiding. Krishna he couldn't hold himself. When Krishna heard this verse, Krishna couldn't hold himself. Who chanted this verse, dear devotees? Radharani chanted. This is the only verse from the Gopi Geet, the last verse that Radharani chanted. When Radharani chanted, Krishna cannot hold onto himself. Krishna comes out of hiding and he falls at the feet of Srimati Radharani. What is Radharani saying? Yatte sujata charana muruvam staneshu. Hey Krishna, your lotus feet is so soft. It is softer than a lotus. In fact, Srila Rupa Goswami says, if a leaf from a branch falls on the hand of Krishna, Krishna's hand will have an impression of that leaf. That is how soft Krishna's hand is. That is how soft Krishna's skin is. अगर एक पत्ता भी गिर जाए, अगर एक पेड़ पौधे से, झाड़ से अगर पत्ता भी गिर जाए और भगवान कि हाथ में यदि पत्ता गिर जाए तो पत्ता का इतना प्रभाव है that it forms an impression in the hand of Krishna. That is how soft Krishna's body is. Very soft. Sukomalam. So Radharani says, my dear Lord, your lotus feet is softer than that lotus. And that lotus feet, when you go for Gocharan, it is possible many times that stones and pebbles are there and they may prick your feet. My dear Lord, we feel so much that your lotus feet are pricked by stones and pebbles. So in reciprocation, the gopis, they would remove the stones and pebbles from the path of Krishna. So that when Krishna next day morning goes for Gocharan, stones and pebbles, they don't prick Krishna's feet. They removed all the stones from Krishna's path. And when Krishna understood this, Krishna also decides to reciprocate. This is the reason Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita. Why? So that Krishna can remove the stones like Karma Mishra Bhakti, Jnana Mishra Bhakti, Jnana Bhakti. These are like different stones. Just like gopis remove the stones from the path of Krishna, Krishna in reciprocation speaks the Bhagavad Gita and removes the stones like these different types of bhakti from our life and gives only pure Shuddha Madhurya Bhakti from the 7th chapter to the 12th chapter. But now that Radharani has chanted this verse, Krishna comes out of hiding and Krishna falls at the feet. Krishna sits cross-legged and he says, "O Radharani, I cannot give you anything. Na parayeham niravadhya samyujam swasadhu krityam vibhudhayushapiva yama bhajandur jarageha shrinkalam samvritshayathat pratiyati sadhunam na parayeham niravadhya samyujam." O Radharani, even in a lifetime of Brahma, I cannot reciprocate to your love. What is the lifetime of Brahma? 311 trillion 40 billion years. Krishna says, if you give me that many amount of years, still I cannot reciprocate to you, Srimati Radharani. नहीं होगा. ठाकुर जी स्वयं बोलते हैं, यदि ब्रह्मा जी का पूरा आजीवन भी मिल जाए, उतना समय मिल जाए, तो भी ठाकुर जी कहते हैं कि नहीं होगा हमसे. I cannot reciprocate to your love. न पारयेहम निरवध्य samyujam swasadu krityam vibudhayushapiva. But Krishna says, I will reciprocate only in one way. Yama bhajan durjara geha shrinkhalam samvrichrayatat pratiyati sadhunam. He Radharani, to reciprocate to your love, I will become a sadhu. Pratiyati sadhunam. This is Bhagavatam, dear devotees. This is the Gopi Geet. In the Gopi Geet, Krishna gives a hint of Chaitanya avatar. Pratiyati sadhunam. Our Acharya says, Krishna says, O Radharani, I will become a sadhu and try to reciprocate to your love and try to understand your love. Who is that sadhu? Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So in the Bhagavatam, after Gopi Geet, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Krishna is quoting this verse and giving a hint of Gaura Lila avatar. And now, when Krishna asked Radharani, O Radhe, what is this love of yours? Yatte sujata charanam buruham staneshu. What is the meaning? Please explain to me. What love is this? But Radharani will not explain. Out of humility, Radharani will not explain, because Radharani is always in the mood of sevak. She wants to serve, and Radharani will never consider herself very great, even though she is the greatest. She is greater even than Krishna. But Radhika, out of her love, will not accept it. So Krishna is not able to understand what is the meaning of Yatte Sujata Charanam Buruham Staneshu. What is the meaning? What is Radharani trying to indicate? But now, when that same Radharani comes as Gadadhar and Sri Krishna is coming as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in the pretext of a Bhagavatam class, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes straight to the point. Oh Gadadhar, here it is mentioned, Yatte Sujata Charanam Buruham Staneshu. What is the meaning? What does this mean? And Gadadhar, who is Radharani, starts explaining, starts giving the purport. And now Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as Krishna is able to understand what Radharani meant during the Rasa Leela. Does this make sense, dear devotees? We are mapping Gopi Geet and Gaura Leela. What Gadadhar spoke to Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the form of a Bhagavatam class. Externally, it looks like two sadhakas are giving Bhagavatam class. One is speaking and one is hearing. But this is only external. Iha by here. The internal is, it is connected to 5,000 years in the past. Whatever Radharani mentioned in the form of Yatte Sujata Charanam Buruham Staneshu, glorifying Krishna's lotus feet, Gadadhar is now giving purport. And now Gadadhar is able to speak because he is Radharani. And now he's in the mood of sadhak. So he is able to explain. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he is hearing Radhe, 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 the mood of Radharani is rising in the heart. And as the mood of Radharani is rising in the heart, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes back to Gambhira. And now in the mood of Radharani, he is chanting the names of Krishna. In the mood of Krishna, he chants the name of Radharani. And in the mood of Radharani, he is chanting the name of Krishna. So in Gambhira, he is chanting Krishna, 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 Krishna. Because he is Radharani. In Krishna Leela, he is chanting Radhe, 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 Radhe. But in Chaitanya Leela, in Gambhira, he is chanting Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. And who helped him taste this dear devotees? It was Gadadhar. So Gadadhar is considered like the heart of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. If not for Gadadhar, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would have found it extremely difficult to taste this mood of Srimati Radharani. Chaitanya Charitamrita describes that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has 3.5 associates. These are the last few minutes, dear devotees. Chaitanya Charitamrita describes Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has 3.5 associates. First, Swarup Damodar. Second, Ramananda Rai. Third, Shiki Mahiti. And the half is Shiki Mahiti's sister Madhavi. Now, what is this concept of 3.5? It is either 3 or 4. What is this half associate? Well, the understanding is Madhavi is naturally feminine. So she could not associate with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu much because Mahaprabhu is a sannyasi. So she would associate with Mahaprabhu internally. So that is why she is not considered a full associate, but a half associate. Because Mahaprabhu was a sannyasi and she was a feminine. She was a Mataji. So internally she would associate. So Swarup Damodar, Ramananda Rai, Shiki Mahiti, and Shiki Mahiti's sister, that is Madhavi. Now the question arises, wait a minute. Gadadhar helped Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taste Radha Bhava and Gadadhar is not an internal associate? Is Kaviraj Goswami wrong? Is Kaviraj Goswami forgotten to write it? No. Gadadhar is not considered an internal associate. Why? Interesting question. That personality who is helping Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taste Radha Bhava, he is not an internal associate? No. Swarup Damodar, Ramananda Rai, Shiki Mahiti and Madhavi are 3.5 associates. Why isn't Gadadhar not an internal associate? The answer is, dear devotees, Gadadhar is Srimati Radharani and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna. And there is no difference between Radha and Krishna. Radha Krishna aiche sada ekai swarup. Leela ras aswadite dhari dui roop. Radha and Krishna are eternally only one form. They are one personality. But Leela ras aswadite dhari dui roop. To taste Leela, they have now taken 2 forms. But factually, they are one. Krishna was sitting on the banks of Vamshivat. And Krishna was thinking to himself, Ama ke anand diye achhe kon jan? Who is that personality who can give me happiness? Krishna was thinking. And as Krishna was thinking, a very young, beautiful Kishori sprang from the left side of Krishna, sprang from the heart of Sri Krishna. And in Sanskrit, dear devotees, love means rag. Love or attachment means rag. And to run means dhavati. This young Kishori who sprang from the left side of Sri Krishna, impelled by love, she started running towards Krishna. So she was impelled by love, that is rag, and she was running towards Krishna, dhavati. That Kishori who was impelled by love and was running towards Krishna is Radha. Ra means love and dhavati means to run. So who is Radharani? She is Krishna. Same personality, no difference. Radha Krishna aiche sada ekai swarup, same personality. So this is the reason Gadadhar, who is Radharani herself, is not considered among internal associates, because it is the same person. Internal associate means he has to be another person. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Gadadhar, one and the same. And finally, dear devotees, to wrap up, we always see that in Gambhira, please hear this very carefully. In Gambhira, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had Ramananda Rai. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had Swarup Damodar. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu never had Gadadhar in Gambhira. Gadadhar was always in Tota Gopinath, Yameshwar Tot. But Gadadhar was never there in Gambhira. Why? Is Gadadhar not qualified? Of course he's qualified. He is giving Bhagavatam class to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is very qualified. So why was he not given entry? Or is there some other mystery to it? The answer is, why was Gadadhar not there in Gambhira? First answer, in Gambhira, who is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Radharani. If you remember, we said this earlier. In Gambhira, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Radharani. Who is Gadadhar? Radharani. So there would be two Radharanis. There would be a transcendental interference in Bhav. So Gadadhar as Radharani stays away, because there is already one Radharani. But this is external. This is not the internal meaning. The deeper meaning our Acharyas give. Please hear this very carefully. Our Acharyas say, they give a very beautiful example. Imagine there is a village, and in village there are many ladies who are married. And it so happens that one lady loses her husband. The husband passes away. So all the ladies of that village, they go to the house of that lady and they start to sympathize. Oh, don't worry, things will be okay. This is how material life is created and things like that. They will speak all the philosophy. It's very easy to speak, very difficult to put that to practice. So if one lady has lost the husband, everyone will come and sympathize. Oh, don't worry, don't worry. But what is going on in the heart of that lady who has lost the husband, only she knows. No one can understand that. Only she knows it. Now, after a few months, in that same village, there is another lady who loses her husband. And all the ladies, they go and they start to sympathize that lady. Oh, don't worry, everything will be okay. Don't worry, everything will be fine. But there is one lady who doesn't go. That is the first lady who lost the husband. Why? Because she knows, even if I speak words of pacification, kuch asar nahi hai. Because only she knows what it feels to lose the husband. Remaining everyone are speaking blank fire. But the first lady who has lost the husband, only she can understand what the second lady is going through when she has lost the husband. Make sense? Only the first lady can understand. That's the reason she doesn't go. Everyone goes, she doesn't go. What is the understanding, dear devotees? This first lady is Gadadhar Pandit. Gadadhar Pandit, 5,000 years back, has already experienced what it feels to be separated from Krishna when Krishna left Vrindavan Dham. Gadadhar already knows this. He's the first lady. And now the second lady is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is now tasting what it means to be separated from Krishna. Swarup Damodar and Rai Ramananda, Lalita and Vishaka, they have not gone through this. So they will speak consoling words. Govinda will speak consoling words because they have not gone through this. But Gadadhar, who has gone through this 5,000 years in the past, he knows this. And for this reason, he doesn't come to Gambhira, because he understands, even if I come and speak sympathetic words, what is the use? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is still going to cry because he has gone through it as a Radharani. Just like the first lady understands what it feels to be separated from the husband, and she doesn't go to the funeral of the death of the second husband, the second lady's husband. This is why Gadadhar, who has experienced this mood of separation from Sri Krishna 5,000 years back as Radharani, doesn't come to Gambhira, because he understands, what can I speak? What can I speak? Even if I speak, there is not going to be any use. Ramananda and Swarup Damodar are speaking. Gadadhar doesn't come. This is the understanding. So external reason is two Radharanis. Internal reason is this mood of separation from Vrajalila. So Vrajalila and Gaurlila flow back and forth. It is not separated. Just like ocean and sand, when ocean water flows, it takes some sand particles, and likewise it goes back and forth. Similarly, where Vrajalila ends is where Gaurlila starts. Gaura Premanande हरि हरि बोल। श्री गदाधर पंडित की जय। श्री सचिनंदन गौरांग महाप्रभु की जय। श्रीमती राधा रानी ठाकुरानी महाभाव स्वरूपिणी श्रीमती राधा रानी की जय। श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। समस्त गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। थैंक यू वेरी मच। हरे कृष्ण।